Against the Eagles, the Chiefs made several mistakes that ended up proving crucial in such a tight contest. Some of these mistakes were glaringly obvious, and some of them were a little more subtle. We're going to break a few of them down in this video. We're going to start in the first quarter. This is the Chiefs' first drive. It's a 0-0 game. The Eagles have just punted, and the Chiefs have a 2nd and 3 at their own about 16-yard line. The Chiefs come out on this play in 12 personnel. 12 personnel means 1 running back and 2 tight ends. Here, the running back is Ajay Pacheco. The tight ends are Noah Gray and Travis Kelce. And there are 2 wide receivers. That's Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. So let's let the play run once and look at it, and then we'll break it down. We've got Mahomes in the shotgun. Kelce motions over to the left, so he's got 2 on his left, 2 on his right. He takes the snap, drops back, and throws a pass over the head of Noah Gray, who's running a quarter pattern. Incomplete. So we'll take a look at what was going on this play. So the Chiefs end up here in this alignment before the snap. On this side here, they're going to have Hollywood Brown run a curl, and Juju is going to run what looks like a return route. Ajay Pacheco is just going to swing out into the flat. On this side, they're going to have a high-low concept with Kelce running an out route and then Noah Gray running a corner pattern behind him. If you see the way that the Eagles defend this, on this side, it essentially looks like 2-man. So they've got 3 defenders over 2. They essentially are probably running a match principle, but they essentially have the corner over the top, and they end up slotting into man-to-man coverage on these 2. On this side, it looks a little more like a match, and the best guess is this kind of looks like Palms coverage, which is what this would call for is essentially Cooper DeJean, the outside corner, would read the number 2, which is Kelce, and take him if he goes out, which is what happens. And then the safety would then be responsible for the number 1's vertical. And that's what it looks like happens here. The Eagles, as noted by Cody Alexander when he broke down the Super Bowl, did a good job of running variations of coverage that got multiple sets of eyes on Kelce, as you see here. But this looks like, whatever match technique it is, it looks like if it were Palms, it would play out this way, with DeJean staying down. And essentially it kind of becomes cover 2 when you get an out route, because the corner stays down, the safety has to take over the top, and you end up with a whole shot here. And that's what the Chiefs are trying to exploit here. And this is something that, fans of the Chiefs over the last couple years will have seen. Getting Noah Gray loose on a corner pattern in the first 15 was especially common in 2023. We saw that a lot. It's a route they use a lot with Noah Gray, and they end up getting him here. Kelce runs the out. The underneath defenders sit on it. The safety is playing deep over top, and Noah Gray gets a nice bit of space in the corner pattern. Mahomes notices it. If you see, he makes the decision to throw here as Gray's breaking out. He's got him. Everything is perfect. And Mahomes just sails this throw. He just missed him. This should be a completion for, a 20-some-odd yard gain. It should be a 22, 23-yard gain. But Mahomes missed him. And if Gray is able to make one man miss, maybe it's an even bigger gain. But early mistake here, and it's just a simple one that you don't really expect from Patrick Mahomes, especially as, this game included. Mahomes is actually playing pretty well this season. It's just that, unfortunately, the offense hasn't completely gotten it together. The second half of the Chargers game looked pretty good, and there were moments in this game that looked okay. But as a whole, the offense hasn't gotten it together. But I don't think that's a reflection of how Mahomes has played. So it is frustrating to see him making a mistake here. And the pocket wasn't the cleanest. Kingsley and Josh Simmons were holding their own, but also the pocket was getting a little constricted. Space was getting a little constricted, but Mahomes usually does make this throw. He's got to make this throw. he just missed him. And that was an early mistake. The Chiefs would then, on 3rd and 3, throw an incomplete pass and have to punt. So this could have been a real drive starter with the Chiefs in a 0-0 game, hopefully getting them going into their first 15 and maybe getting toward a score. Instead, miss this throw, next play fails, you end up punting, missed opportunity. Then we jump ahead a bit at the game. We're now at 5:48 to go in the first quarter. It's still a 0-0 game, and the Chiefs are getting into field goal range with a chance to hopefully take the lead. They come out here, lined up in 11 personnel. That's 1 running back, Kareem Hunt, 1 tight end, Travis Kelce, gets you 11 personnel. And they line up with 3 wide receivers. And it looks like, who's that at the top of the screen? That's Thornton, it looks like. Then who's down here? Is that Badger? 89. Oh. So, sorry, not Badger, that's Brownlee. So Brownlee's in the game here. So there are 3 wide receivers. That's Tyquan Thornton, that's Hollywood Brown, and that's Jason Brownlee. It looks like the Chiefs are going to run a pass concept here, and if you notice, the Eagles' Zach Bond comes down, getting ready to show blitz, and Kareem Hunt gets a little too excited to come into pass protection, comes off his spot a little bit before the snap, and gets called for a false start. So not much to break down here about the play. Why are we showing this to you? It's because, again, this was a pretty impactful play. If you remember, this drive ended up with a missed field goal. So we've got a 3rd and 11 here. The Chiefs look like they're going to be aggressive and try to convert. They're looking to throw the ball and get a first down. So you can see here comes Bond. And then keep your eyes on Kareem Hunt as Bond makes his way down. Right here, he shifts right there. Just a little excited to get into pass protection right before the snap. Gets called for the false start. The Chiefs lose 5 yards here. So we go from 3rd and 11 to 3rd and 16. And we'll take a look at that 3rd and 16 play, but this miscue ended up costing them 5 yards, and that proved important as they ended up missing a field goal. And then just for fun's sake, if you take a look at this, Trey Smith going at it with Jalen Carter, gives him a push and then tries to get a flag on Trey Smith. But the refs just let him play. All right, so now we've had the false start. We've lost our 5 yards, and that was a miscue. But I will put the next play in here as a miscue as well. And let's take a look at it before we kind of discuss our reasoning. We'll break down the play in detail, but let's just take a quick look at it. First, just noting that the Chiefs are in 21 personnel here. That's 2 running backs and 1 tight end, and then they've got 2 wide receivers. But let's take a look here at the play, and then we'll break down what went wrong here. So we've got Mahomes in shotgun between his 2 backs. He sends Brashard Smith out to the right and hands it off right up the middle to Kareem Hunt, who gets 3 yards and puts the Chiefs in position for a 58-yard field goal. All right, so the first thing that I think was a mistake here is it's just my pet peeve. It really frustrates me when teams try to settle for long field goals. You know, like, this is not an automatic business, and, you know, spoiler alert, Harrison Butker ended up missing this 58-yard field goal. But here we are in a position where, from where the Chiefs are right now, it's a 61-yarder. In my opinion, you know, it's 3rd and 16. Your chance of getting a first down is low. Maybe you don't want to be, like, bombing it out here. But at least run a concept that you think is going to get you, like, 8 or 9 plus yards. Something where the defense will be willing to give it to you, and because the reason why you're not running a concept that'll get you 15 or 16 yards is the defense isn't going to give you that. They're not trying to give you the first down. They might very well give you 8 or 9, though, because you're still in a 3rd and 7 position, you know, if you get 9 yards. And at least that takes it to the point where you're looking at a 52-yarder. But when you're running the ball, especially with the Chiefs, you're not expecting more than, 4 yards of run. The Chiefs very much last year and this year, their run game has been, outside of Patrick Mahomes, has been, at that 3 to 4 yards a clip mark. So, and I know they had an interesting run dialed up that just didn't work, and we'll get into the reasons behind that in a second. But I just don't agree with the idea of running the ball when you're in a position where if you get nothing, you're at a 61-yard field goal. Getting yourself in position for a 57 or 58-yarder to me isn't good enough. I don't agree with the decision making here. I think you have to throw this ball, and even if you're going to throw it without the goal of getting a first down, you really should be trying to get as many yards as you can here to make this an easier kick. You're not in a luxurious position of it being like a 35-yarder where you can just be like, all right, I'll just take 3 or 4 yards. We're talking about a 61-yarder right here. You only get 3 yards on your run, which is what happens. You're still looking at an extremely long field goal, which is what they were faced with. So, but let's look into actually what they were trying to do on this run, because it was an interesting concept. They just did not execute it well. And part of that is just how the Eagles ended up playing it. So what they're really doing is they're trying to let in the first level defenders and get to the second level quickly. So they're running a trap block on 97. They want 97 to come in, and they're pulling Trey Smith to try to block him. Creed Humphrey is going to wall off Jalen Carter here. And everyone is ascending to the next level. So Josh Simmons is going to try to make it out to get to Zach Bond. Kingsley Suamataia is, he was trying to get to 52, it looks like. So Josh Simmons is trying to get up. Kingsley is trying to get out. We're trying to block linebackers up here. Creed was going to wall off here. Trey Smith was going to come back for the trap block, and Jawan Taylor was going to try to get to the second level and block this linebacker here. But the way that 97 got off the ball really kind of messed with a lot of things. So it looks like, and let's scoot over to the end zone cam to get a better view here. So just to explain it one more time from this view, 97 is here. So the guy, Trey, is going to come here and try to trap block him. So here we're letting him through. Kingsley is trying to seal out. Josh Simmons is trying to get to the second level and block Zach Bond up here. Creed is going to wall this guy off. Jawan Taylor is coming up here. Travis ends up trying to decide. He's got kind of a choice between these two. Who's the most dangerous? Block one of those two. So to start, 97 ends up taking kind of an outside pass rush angle, I guess assuming that this is going to be a pass on 3rd and long, and it kind of messes with everything. First of all, he doesn't allow Josh Simmons a clean release to get up, right? He ends up coming, and let's run this real quick, you can see that Josh Simmons actually very athletically has to jump out of the way to get away from him. His rush to the outside, too, makes it hard for Kingsley to avoid him, so Kingsley has to brush by him on his way to trying to block out here. So ideally, if he, what I'm guessing they assumed is that he was going to be coming a little bit more inside. In that case, Josh Simmons has a free release to get the Bond, and Kingsley is a lot easier able to avoid him and get out to the linebacker. But if we look at these two, this just messes with their timing entirely. Kingsley whiffs, and Josh Simmons is in no position after dancing around to get over to Bond, who actually ends up being the first person to hit Kareem Hunt. So we've completely blown that there. Then because of the way he came around, Trey Smith isn't even able to get over to a trap block, which is fine. It doesn't really affect the play. But that entire concept just gets completely ruined. The linemen that we thought were going to be out blocking at the second level just aren't there. On the right side, it didn't get a lot better as Jawan Taylor whiffed on his block too. So, the concept that we were trying to run completely failed. And really, in my estimation, it's because of how quickly 97 got off the ball and how he decided to rush more to the outside, which ended up messing with both Simmons and Suamata'ia's abilities to get to where they wanted to go. Their timing was completely thrown off. And with Simmons unable to get to Bond just kind of had a free run at Kareem Hunt, who has no way, he does his best to try to avoid him, but then the defensive end peeling back ends up getting him as he had to hesitate and try to avoid Bond. So if Simmons weren't forced to do this, do like a matador move to get around, he could possibly have gotten out to Bond and at least allowed this run to have a chance. Ultimately, it just gets blown up. But to me, more than the blocking not working, I think the philosophy here was a mistake, that one should not be trying to, we're not settling for long field goals here. I don't think that's a good winning strategy from a coach. Put yourselves in position where points are more or less guaranteed. Don't assume you're going to make something from 58. And in this case, we didn't. And in a game we lost by 3, the false start combined with this play call ended up resulting in a missed field goal. That's 3 points that could have been had there. We now jump ahead to 13:44 to go in the third quarter. It's a 10-10 game now. The Chiefs have the first possession of the second half, and they're facing a 3rd and 1 at about their own 36-yard line. So the Chiefs are lined up in 11 personnel. Their one running back is Kareem Hunt. One tight end is Travis Kelce. They've got Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, and Hollywood Brown on the field. So let's take a look at what they do here. Mahomes in the shotgun. Takes the snap, throws it over the middle late to Hollywood Brown, who's not able to get the first down. So why are we talking about miscues here? Well, conceptually, what the Chiefs are doing is they are sending Juju Smith-Schuster on an in-cutting route. Tyquan Thornton is running a post. Kareem Hunt is kind of running that rail route going up the sideline. And we're running mesh in the middle. And so we talked a little bit about mesh in some previous videos. But ultimately, what the point of mesh is you're running crossers against man. And you have one route that comes in and sets the depth and sets a pick. And you have the second route, that's the guy you're trying to throw to, who rubs off of that, making it hard for his defender to trail and making his defender kind of bubble around, getting him open and allowing him to make a catch. So if you remember from last week, this was a mesh route that resulted in the Xavier Worthy injury. We talked a little bit on that play about whose fault it was more. And, the more that I was listening to people talk about mesh and how it's run, really more and more it seems like it's on the guy who's making the catch to make sure they don't run into each other. Because the first guy, Travis Kelce in this case, both last week and this week, is there to kind of set the depth. And once he sets his spot, it's up to the other guy to run off of him. Yes, Travis Kelce didn't get as much depth as he should have against Derwin James. Derwin James did a good job of kind of forcing him more toward the line of scrimmage. But once that is set, then it's Worthy's job to kind of run off of the depth that Travis Kelce set. And Worthy ran into Kelce because he was looking back at the quarterback too quickly. So with that knowledge, then we come over here, and remember, it's Kelce's job. He's going to come and set the depth, and then Brown is supposed to run off of him. And it's telling where Brown turns, right? Brown turns here, so this is the expectation that Brown has, is where the depth is going to be set. And Worthy also kind of turned deeper than where Kelce had set the depth. So that shows that maybe that was more the intention, because, again, Kelce is kind of getting jammed as he comes up. But Kelce settles here, just in front of the first down marker, with Brown out here. So Brown then is forced to come back around Kelce in order to get his rub. And Brown actually, it's not a very tight rub by Kelce, right? He actually leaves a little bit of a gap. So he really comes back Mahomes is forced to hold on to this until he crosses. But ultimately what that results in is that Brown is catching this ball a full yard behind the first down marker. And with his defender just screaming full speed, he's able to come in and make that hit before Brown can turn upfield and get the first down. So last time we talked about how the fact that they ran into each other was probably more unworthy than it was Kelsey. Of course, Kelsey would have rather gotten more depth, but once he didn't, Worthy has got to run off of him. In this case, I feel like if you were to put fault as far as like why they didn't get the first down, I think it's a little more on Kelsey here. Because Kelsey, when he sets the depth here, he's forcing Brown to run underneath. They have the added problem that there's already a linebacker in the middle of the field as a robber. I would imagine if you're Kelsey, you try to set that depth at the same level. Like if Kelsey can get to Zach Bond's level here, Brown essentially has a double pick. He's got Bond and Kelsey that he can rub by. I feel like that's what one should try to get to on this play. But instead, Brown has to avoid Bond and Kelsey and has to bow back so far that it's going to take him. I mean, look at where he was trying to run this, just inside the 40, and where he ends up getting to, which is, he gets almost down to the 36. So like it's probably about a 3.5 yard difference how far back he has to go. Really, he gets to the 36. So yeah, he does. Like when he catches the ball, he's at the 36 yard line. This is the kind of attention to detail stuff that you expect Andy Reid teams to get right. But in this case, Kelsey, he's getting jammed, but he kind of settles here. And I feel like if Kelsey would have settled right here, that gives Brown the chance to come back and make this catch and easily get the first down. But because now Brown has to bow back, and I think you can give a little bit of blame to Brown, is that he really brought it back far. Brought it all the way to the 36. If he rubs this tight to Kelsey's body, just brushes his shoulder but commits to the horizontal, he could still theoretically be around here when he's coming to catch the ball instead of all the way back here. So a little blame on Brown too. He does, he leaves a gap. He doesn't really brush by, and he doesn't keep it flat. He keeps coming back toward the quarterback, and so he's losing the ability to get the first down. But if Kelsey had set his depth a little higher, this would have been less of a problem. So again, like last week, a bit of blame to go around, but I think this time the main culprit is Kelsey. In any case, the end result is that Brown makes the catch but doesn't gain any yardage, and the Chiefs are put in a 4th and short situation. So from this standpoint, you can see Mahomes looking for the mesh. You see Bond playing robber in the middle. And then the way that Kelsey set up, Brown ends up having to get by both of them. And he gets so far in that his defender is able to just tee off on him and keep him from getting the first down. It's that attention to detail stuff that we expect Andy Reid teams to be so good at, but they didn't execute there. So we'll jump ahead to the very next play. Chiefs couldn't convert on 3rd down. Now they have 4th down. Again, if you remember game situation, this is the beginning of the 3rd quarter. It's 0-0. 13 minutes to go now in the 3rd quarter. And the Chiefs have a 4th and 1 at about their own 36-yard line. So there was a lot of discussion here about the decision to go for it. I don't really have a problem to go for it. People talking about how the defense was playing really well. I mean, that's true. But at the same time, I think Andy could serve to be a little less risk-averse when it comes to going for it with his quarterback especially and his team. I think Andy typically does have good plays called for these situations. I just feel like he didn't have a good one for this one. And so we'll kind of break down why. But I personally don't have a problem with the decision to go for it. I just don't like the play that he called, and we can get into why that is. First, let's kind of take a quick look at everything. So the Chiefs come out here lined up in what really would be considered like 32 personnel. They've got three, well, I mean, I guess it really depends on who you classify as what. If you're classifying these two as running backs, it would be 32. I guess you wouldn't. You'd call them tight ends, in which case this is 14 personnel. One running back and 1, 2, 3, 4 tight ends. So, but wait, there are only 3 tight ends on the roster. Yeah, that's true. But Mike Caliendo is checked in eligible here as a tight end. He is a guard, but he's playing tight end on this play because you see the 5 ineligible players, the linemen, are 3, 4, 5. That means this is an eligible receiver and this is an eligible receiver on the end of the line. So it's like they have 4 tight ends. So let's take a look at this play and then we'll break down why I don't like it. Mahomes is under center, takes a snap and hands it to Kareem Hunt moving right, who gets tripped up in the hole and stuffed, and the Chiefs do not convert. So what are the responsibilities here? So we're going to have Trey Smith blocking straight up, and Juwan Taylor is responsible here for walling off this D tackle. At the same time, if you see Mike Caliendo is going to climb up to this linebacker, Robert Tonyan is going to swing around and try to block Cooper DeJean. And so, again, you can see here the walling off by Juwan Taylor. Creed Humphrey is pulling, coming to the hole, and probably supposed to block the safety here. Robert Tonyan's coming around to block Cooper DeJean. Noah Gray is here to seal the edge against the end. And then Kareem Hunt is supposed to come through. Well, so this does not go well. I think the first thing that causes a problem is that the Eagles are really firing off the line here. And this is Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter right next to each other. Juwan Taylor kind of struggles to wall off Jalen Carter, which makes it hard. Creed gets kind of pushed back, and it makes it hard for him to get around and pull into the hole. So he's kind of tripping coming through the hole. Not good, step 1. He's not able to get up to the second level defender that he's supposed to be pulling and blocking. The other problem, I mean, it stems from the same problem, is that Juwan Taylor not being able to wall off Jalen Carter here, and Carter then ends up coming through and sealing this hole that Kareem Hunt is supposed to get through. He then also runs into the problem that Nolan Smith is setting the edge against Noah Gray, who again gets blown back too. So Kareem Hunt is getting forced through a very small hole here, and he's not able to get through. Jalen Carter gets hands on him, so does Nolan Smith. Jordan Davis comes around to try to clean things up, and they stop him from getting the first down. So of the critiques that people have about this play, whether it be running the ball versus keeping it in Patrick Mahomes' hands, or the fact that they're kind of running more to the side rather than running a dive kind of concept, those are actually not my problems with the play. You know, Andy Reid has shown really good variety that has been able to get these short yardage runs in various situations. So I actually don't mind the play at all. I think the kind of creativity of going sideways, I think pulling Creed is fine with me too. Maybe one could argue that pulling a lineman against this front, especially where guys are really kind of firing forward and you have some talented linemen, maybe that's less ideal. But to me, the problem I have with this play is ultimately the hole you are trying to create from your running back is it's dependent on a seal by Juwan Taylor, who I think it's not at all controversial to say he is the worst run blocking lineman on our offensive line. I don't even know that it's that close. Joshua Simmons' forte is not blocking, it is blocking, but it's not run blocking. I think he's an excellent pass blocker who is a good run blocker. But he's still a better run blocker than Juwan Taylor. Juwan Taylor is someone who's a good pass blocker who's a bad run blocker. And our interior guys are all good run blockers. Kingsley, Creed, and Trey. So, like, ultimately, you're trying to get a seal on probably their best defensive lineman, Jalen Carter, with your worst run blocker in here, Juwan Taylor. He's responsible for creating that hole. That's not a good idea. The other part is that the hole is dependent on Noah Gray being able to set the edge against a defensive end. And true, Nolan Smith is a small defensive end. But Noah Gray, as much as I think he is a willing and effortful blocker, especially in the situations where he can come in from more of an H-back or fullback position and try to block like this. I mean, he's trying to set the edge against the defensive end, and look at him just get blown back. So your hole is predicated on Noah Gray blocking a defensive end and Juwan Taylor walling off Jalen Carter. That's the hole that you are hoping to create. I mean, to me, that's just bad planning. Like, you have a good run blocking line. Use the guys that are good and that are more likely to create the holes that you need. I just don't understand the logic in trying to rely on this as, when you have guys like Creed and Kingsley and Trey Smith in the interior. Like, ultimately, I want, whether I convert this fourth down, especially in my own territory, to be dependent on blocks by those kinds of guys, not by Juwan Taylor and Noah Gray. That's my 2 cents into why I put this in the miscues category and why I feel like this play was a mistake. It's not about the going for it on fourth down to me. It's not about the running it horizontally versus vertically on principle. It's relying on Juwan Taylor and relying on Noah Gray to be your guys that make the key blocks to spring Kareem Hunt. That, to me, I think is the mistake. And if you see it from this view, like, look at how congested things are in here. Like, Juwan Taylor just cannot keep Jalen Carter from firing upfield and getting a hand on Hunt. Look at how much Noah Gray's struggling in there with Nolan Smith. I mean, this play has no chance. And ultimately, we did the 2 plays back-to-back, the Hunt false start and then the draw. When the Chiefs missed that field goal earlier, that was a touchdown drive on a short field for the Eagles. The Eagles ended up just having to go 52 yards for a touchdown. Then the same thing over here, the Chiefs give up the ball at their own 35, 36. Well, this was the Eagles' this was another touchdown drive, right? This was a field goal. The defense did pretty well here. But again, this was a short field for the Eagles who were really struggling. We've got 10 points coming from these, 2 sets of miscues that we showed you in a game where the Eagles only scored 20. So that's really tough. And for 7 more points, so let's jump to the next miscue. Yes. Well, you knew we were going to include this one, right when you saw that this was a mistakes and miscues segment. We are at 13:07 to go in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs are down 13-10, and they've got a 2nd and goal at about the 7-yard line. So they've spread it out here, and they are in 11 personnel. They have 1 running back, that's Kareem Hunt. 1 tight end is Travis Kelce. They've wide receivers. They've got Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton, and Jason Brownlee lined up here. So let's take a look at this play, and then we can break down what happened. Mahomes starts out an empty in the shotgun. They motion Kareem Hunt back and send him around in orbit motion. Takes a snap, throws over the middle to Kelce. The pass is deflected and intercepted by Makuba, who takes it all the way down to the 41-yard line before Josh Simmons makes a great tackle to initially save a touchdown, but the Eagles would go down and score a touchdown, ultimately proving to be the game-deciding points there. That put them up 20-10 at that point. So, what happened on this play? So, on this side, so basically this is the kind of side that the Chiefs are interested in. On the left side here, you're just going to have kind of route combination into the end zone. You see that they're in cover one man, and so on the right side, the combination that they run, which is where Mahomes wants to go, is they've got Hollywood Brown running a drag, Kareem Hunt running kind of like a rail out to the pylon, and then Travis Kelce, we see him run this route, this kind of angle route in the red zone a lot. He'll come out and come in. And so Mahomes drops back here, hits the back of his drop, and as they've done so often before, when he sees Kelce doing this is a timing play. He ends up throwing this. It gets on Kelce quickly. He does have his head around. It may have taken him a second to locate the ball as the ball came out quickly, but he's got to make this catch. Hits him in the hands. And Makuba intercepts it and brings it back. So we can see it from this perspective here. Mahomes taking the snap. He is getting some pressure. Creed is struggling a little bit with Jalen Carter. So he's a little hurried on his throw, especially as Carter's getting his hand up. So it is a little hurried, but this ball, hits Kelce right in the hands. So in discussing the play later, Mahomes said two things. One, he said, is that the ball came out early, which you can see why. He was under pressure from Carter. I mean, he doesn't really have the opportunity to hold this ball any longer. And the other thing he said is he'd like to put this ball on Kelce's body instead of out in front, which is smart. I think, that should be the goal in this situation, particularly when you have an underneath route where a ball could be tipped and intercepted. It's better to put it in the frame of the receiver's body, give him a better chance to catch it, and make it less likely that the ball is deflected and intercepted if they don't catch it. That being said, this ball should be caught. This is not a quarterback problem on this play. Unfortunately, Kelce just dropped the pass. And given the circumstances, the ball came out hot, the ball came out quick. It wasn't quite on his body. Maybe for a bottom of the roster guy, you could make an exception, or for, someone who wasn't established. But this is Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's got to make that catch. And unfortunately, he does not. And that's a big swing for the Chiefs, because what could have been a 17-13 lead ultimately ends up being a 20-10 deficit as the Eagles came down and scored a touchdown. So if you're keeping score at home, the missed field goal by Butker, which we showed a couple things that led to that, including the Kareem Hunt false start, and then the Chiefs kind of settling to run a run play that ultimately was, the blocking just was not well executed. That lost the Chiefs 3 points right there. Then the Chiefs, and subsequently the Eagles had a short field and went down and got 7 of their own. The Chiefs then, on their third and fourth down plays that we showed you, where they failed a fourth down, giving the ball to the Eagles basically in field goal range. That's another 3 points for the Eagles there. And then this play here, we lose out at an opportunity to get 7, and then the Eagles go down on the shorter field and get 7 themselves. So both of the Eagles' touchdowns came from short fields given by Chiefs errors, and then they also were gifted a field goal. That's their 17 points of their 20 right there. So the Chiefs had a lot of mistakes in this one that ended up costing them and were major reasons why they lost this game. As we'll talk about in other aspects of the film, it's not something that really, really concerns me long term. It was a game that the Chiefs overall fixed some things from last week and did some things worse than last week, but it all appears to be in a way that to me is trending toward a team that's going to be firing on all cylinders as we hit the stretch run into the playoffs if everybody's able to stay healthy.